Think about those times, when you're trying to get two things done at once, but they just seem to. Well, they pull in opposite directions.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe designing a home security system.
Mm.
You want it to catch absolutely every potential threat, right?
Yeah, every shadow, every noise.
Exactly. But you don't want to blasting notifications every time a leaf blows past or the neighbor's cat wanders over.
Yeah, that'd drive you crazy. High sensitivity versus high precision.
Precisely. You want both. Super sensitive to danger, but also really, really accurate in spotting it. Makes you wonder, could you actually nail both?
That is. Well, that's a fundamental challenge, that balancing act. And it's something AI is tackling in some really interesting ways now.
Okay.
One of the most promising approaches is what's called multi-layered AI models.
Multi-layered AI. Okay. Let's unpack that a bit. Sounds like it's more involved than just having lots of AI doing things. What's the basic idea?
Exactly. It's not just throwing more AI at the problem. It's about using multiple AI models, but strategically, in a
Sure.
sequence. A sequence.
Yeah, so each model basically takes the output from the one before it and
Yep.
sort of refines the information step by step. It's a staged process, a smart one.
I see. And that's our deep dive for today, then. How these layered models actually work.
Right. Why this approach seems to be, well, frankly, better than just relying on a single AI for complex tasks.
And we're actually seeing this used. We've got some pretty fascinating research papers here that get right into the details.
Precisely. So our mission, if you like, is to really understand how breaking problems down, like this sequential filtering, how it leads to AI systems that are more accurate, more reliable.
Hopefully leading to a bit of an aha moment for you, the listener, about why this layered thing is such a big deal.
That's the plan. It's a really significant development.
Okay, so maybe let's start with the why. Why does the traditional way, using just one AI model for a task sometimes fall short? What are the limits there? Well, as the research consistently points out, single AI models often bump up against this basic trade-off. It's that sensitivity versus precision thing again.
Right.
Think back to the security system. If you tune it to be hypersensitive, catch absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Well, you just end up drowning in false alarms.
Yeah, alert fatigue is real.
Totally. But conversely, if you make it super precise, so it only flags things it's really sure about to avoid those false alarms.
And you risk missing something important, a real threat.
It's like a seesaw, yeah.
Exactly. Push one end up, the other goes down. One of the papers even talked about the ROC curve concept. You don't need the visual, but the core idea is just that. A single model really struggles to be great at both finding everything and being right about what it finds.
Got it. And I guess that gets even harder with really complicated problems, right? Things with tons of different data points or features. Oh, absolutely. A single model might only really latch onto or learn effectively from a fraction of all the available information. It's like trying to understand a complex story by only reading chapter 3. You're missing critical context.
Good analogy.
Yeah.
You're just not getting the full picture.
Yeah.
And what about uncertainty? If something's a bit ambiguous at first, can a single model easily, revise its opinion later?
That's another key limitation. Often it makes an initial judgment and sort of locks it in. It doesn't really have a built-in mechanism to easily go back and say, based on this new clue, maybe my first guess was wrong. It lacks that iterative refinement.
Okay, so we see the bottlenecks with single models. That really sets the stage for why you'd want something different, like this multi-layered approach.
Yeah.
You mentioned a step-by-step filter system. How does that actually function?
Yeah, think of it like breaking down one big complex decision into a series of smaller, more focused steps. Each stage has its own specific job. And our sources, they generally highlight a kind of common 3-stage pattern in these models, like 3 filters in a row, each one cleaning up the information a bit more.
All right, 3 stages. Let's walk through them. Stage 1, what's happening there?
Stage 1 is all about comprehensive detection, casting a really wide net. The main goal here is just to capture as much potential stuff as possible.
Okay, so quantity over quality at this point.
In a sense, yes, it's designed for high sensitivity. That means it's okay if it has higher uncertainty, maybe brings in more false positives initially. The absolute crucial thing here is minimizing false negatives.
Meaning, don't miss anything important.
Exactly. You absolutely don't want something critical slipping through right at the start. Think of maybe an initial medical screening test. It might flag things that could be an issue, even if many turn out benign later. It's broad.
So it's deliberately a bit oversensitive, just to be safe. Catches things that might not be problems, but you check them anyway.
Precisely. Which leads us nicely into stage 2. This stage focuses on error removal.
Ah, cleaning up the mess from stage 1.
Kind of, yeah. The idea is to start filtering out those initial false positives, reduce the uncertainty. It's an intermediate check, a refinement.
Okay.
So if that initial medical screen flagged a few things, stage 2 would involve more specific tests to rule some of those out. Or think about spam filters in email. After a basic first filter, a second, more sophisticated check looks for specific patterns to weed out legitimate emails that got caught by mistake.
Okay, so we're getting more selective now, narrowing things down.
Yeah.
Which brings us to stage 3.
Exactly. Stage 3 is about precise confirmation, high confidence. The goal here is to make a really accurate final decision with very low uncertainty.
This is where you really want to be sure.
Right. The focus shifts to eliminating any remaining false positives. Think about, say, the final step in credit card fraud detection. After initial flags and maybe some secondary analysis, this stage aims to definitively say, yes, this is fraud, or no, it's fine, with very high confidence before blocking a transaction.
That makes total sense. It's like a funnel, isn't it? Starts wide, gets progressively narrower and more accurate. I think one of the papers had a sort of calculation showing this effect.
Yes, it did. And it's a great way to visualize it. Let's say, hypothetically, stage 1 catches 95 out of 100 potential items. Stage 2 looks at those 95 and maybe keeps, say, 84% of them, filtering out the obvious errors.
Okay, so down to about 80 items.
Roughly, yeah. Then stage 3 examines those 80 and maybe confirms, with high confidence, 88% of that group. So you end up with around 70 confirmed items from your original 100.
Wow, okay, so even though each stage isn't perfect, the combined effect significantly refines the outcome down to the most likely candidates.
Exactly. It shows how the layers build on each other to improve overall accuracy.
So, okay, this sounds really good in theory. How does it actually perform in the real world? Do we have solid examples from the research?
Oh, absolutely. The sources give some excellent ones. Let's take airport security, the TSA checkpoint.
Okay, yeah. X-rays, pat-downs, the works.
Right. So stage 1 is often that X-ray scanner for your bags. According to one study, this stage can be really sensitive, maybe like 98%. It's great at flagging anything that looks even slightly suspicious,
Right.
but the precision might be quite low, maybe only 15%, which means it flags a lot of completely harmless stuff.
Think how often a bag gets pulled aside for a closer look.
Yeah, my water bottle, my laptop charger. Guilty as charged.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That stage 1, high sensitivity, low precision. So that triggers stage 2, the manual check.
The security officer opens the bag.
Right. This stage has, say, medium sensitivity, maybe 85%, but much better precision, maybe around 70%.
Yeah.
They're better at figuring out if that flagged item is actually a threat or just, your toiletries. They rule out a lot of the initial false alarms.
Okay. And is there sometimes a third stage?
Yes, potentially. If there's still suspicion after the manual check, they might use more specialized tech, like those swabs for explosives trace detection.
This stage might have medium sensitivity again, say 80%, but really high precision, maybe 95%. It's for making that final high confidence call in tricky cases. So when you look at the whole system working together,
You get a different picture.
exactly, the overall system might achieve something like, say, 66% sensitivity, which is still pretty good, but with a very high 95% precision. The goal is catching threats effectively while minimizing those massive disruptions from constant false alarms.
That really paints a clear picture of the trade-offs at each stage balancing out overall. What about the medical example? Breast cancer screening.
Yes, another great illustration. Stage 1 is often the mammogram. Research suggests it can have high sensitivity, maybe 95% in some scenarios, good at detecting potential abnormalities.
Again, the precision issue.
Right, precision might be lower, maybe around 12%. That means it can generate a significant number of false positives, things that look suspicious but aren't actually cancer.
Which must cause a lot of anxiety and lead to more tests.
Absolutely, and that often triggers stage 2, maybe an ultrasound. This usually has medium sensitivity, perhaps 90%, but better precision, maybe 50%. It helps clarify some of those initial ambiguous findings.
Getting a clearer picture.
And then, if needed, stage 3 is often a biopsy. This is invasive, yes, but offers very high sensitivity, like 98%, and extremely high precision, maybe 99%. It gives that definitive diagnosis.
Wow.
So the overall performance for this whole layered process might end up around 84% sensitivity and 99% precision. The system prioritizes not missing a potential cancer, high sensitivity overall, while drastically reducing the number of people who undergo unnecessary invasive procedures, high precision overall.
These examples really drive home the practical value, especially where the consequences of mistakes are so high. So, stepping back a bit, what are the big advantages that make this layered system work so well?
Well, the research highlights a few key things. First is this idea of specialized roles.
Like each layer has its own job description.
Exactly. One paper described it nicely. Stage one is like the search party, finding anything that might be relevant. Stage two is the analyst, sifting through the initial findings, removing noise. And stage three is the judge, making the final high confidence decision.
Okay.
This specialization lets you optimize each step for its specific task, which usually leads to better overall results than one generalist model trying to do everything.
Right, a team of specialists versus one jack of all trades. Makes sense. What else?
Another huge benefit is how it lets you manage error costs more strategically.
Error costs. You mean like how bad is it to make a mistake?
Precisely. As we saw in healthcare, missing a disease, a false negative, is often way worse than ordering an extra test, a false positive. In security, missing a threat is usually worse than inconveniencing someone with an extra check.
Right. Different mistakes have different weights.
Exactly. And this layered approach lets you design each stage to specifically minimize the most costly type of error at that point in the process. It's smarter about which mistakes it tolerates where.
That's really insightful. It's not just about raw accuracy, but about managing the impact of potential errors.
Spot on. And then there's the idea of gradual information refinement. Each stage builds on the last one, reducing uncertainty step by step.
Like zooming in on the right answer.
Yeah, or like assembling a puzzle. Each stage adds more pieces, clarifies the picture, increases the confidence in the final outcome. It aligns quite well with Bayesian thinking, updating your beliefs as you get more evidence.
Okay. And didn't one of the sources use an analogy to, like, human processes?
It did. Think about how doctors often work. You might have a general checkup, stage one, then if something seems off, maybe more detailed tests or imaging, stage two, and finally, if needed, a consultation with a specialist, stage three.
Ah, yeah. That's a perfect analogy. We do this sort of thing intuitively.
We often do. For complex decisions, it makes the AI concept feel much more grounded.
Okay, so we get the advantages. How do these multi-layered models stack up against other AI approaches? We talked about single models. What else?
Well, it's important to distinguish them from another common technique called ensemble learning.
Ensemble learning. How's that different? Sounds like it also uses multiple models.
It does, but the structure is different. In ensemble learning, you typically train several different models, often independently, and then you combine their predictions at the end, maybe by averaging them or having them vote. They often work in parallel.
Okay, so multiple opinions combined at the end.
Right. Multi-layered models, though, work sequentially. The output of Model 1 is the input for Model 2, and so on. It's a pipeline, refining the information as it goes, not just combining separate final answers.
Got it. Sequential refinement versus parallel combination. That's a key difference.
Exactly. Now, these layered models are powerful, but the research also points out some important things to keep in mind when actually building and using them. They're not magic bullets.
Okay, what are some of the challenges or considerations?
Well, one big one is error propagation. If an early stage makes a mistake, especially if it misses something important, a false negative, that error can carry through. The later stages might never even see the thing they were supposed to analyze.
Right, if the first filter blocks the crucial piece of info, the other filters can't fix that. Garbage in, garbage out, potential.
Well, maybe not garbage, but definitely missing information in, missing information out. Another point is optimizing resources.
Computational power and stuff.
Yeah. You might want to use, say, faster, less complex models for that initial wide net stage one because you're processing a lot of data. Then you can afford to use more powerful, maybe slower models for stages 2 and 3 where you're dealing with fewer, more targeted cases.
Like smart about where you spend your computing budget.
Exactly. Efficiency matters. And finally, feedback loops are really valuable.
Feedback loops.
Yeah, the idea that if you detect errors in the later stages, you can feed that information back to help improve the earlier stages. So the whole system learns and gets better over time. It's about creating a continuous improvement cycle.
That makes a lot of sense. Learning from mistakes at every level to fine-tune the whole pipeline. Okay, So, let's try and bring it all together. What's the main takeaway here?
I think the core message really is that multi-layered AI offers a very clever way around that fundamental sensitivity precision trade-off that often limits single models by breaking problems down and refining information sequentially.
You get the best of both worlds, or at least a better balance.
A much better, more practical balance, yeah.
Yeah.
It allows for more nuanced control, leading to AI systems that are ultimately more robust, more reliable, especially for complex, high-stakes tasks.
And for you, the listener, understanding this isn't just academic. This layered approach is humming away behind the scenes in more and more systems that affect us, healthcare security, finance. Knowing how it works helps understand how we build AI we can actually trust.
Absolutely. And it leaves us with a final thought to chew on, maybe. This principle of sequential refinement, different levels of scrutiny at different stages. Could that apply elsewhere? Could breaking down complex decisions in your own work or even personal life into distinct stages with different goals, could that lead to better outcomes, fewer costly mistakes? It's interesting to think about applying that layered logic beyond just AI.
Definitely food for thought. A multi-stage approach to decision-making in general. Very
Yeah.
interesting.